You don't belong here, you are a stain on this company, just like the mess you just made. The voice echoed off the glass walls of the conference room. It was sharp, cruel, and young. Brad, the newly appointed creative director of Thorne Architecture, stood over the woman on the floor. He was 32, wearing a suit that cost more than the woman made in a year. On her knees, scrambling to pick up a fallen sponge, was Maggie. She was 63, her back curved from decades of scrubbing floors, her hands red and chapped. She didn't argue, she never argued, she just kept her eyes down, whispering an apology that no one listened to. "I'm sorry, sir, I was just looking at the drawing." It was slipping off the table. "Looking?" Brad scoffed, kicking the edge of her cleaning cart. "People like you don't look at blueprints, Maggie. People like you empty the trash. Now get out, you're fired. I want you out of the building before I count to 10. Maggie froze. This job was all she had. It was the only thing keeping a roof over her head. But before she could beg, the heavy oak doors at the back of the room creaked open. A deep, gravelly voice stopped the air in the room. "Brad, pick up the bucket." It was William Thorne, the CEO, the legend, and he was staring at something on the table, not the mess, but the charcoal smudge Maggie had left on the blueprints. A smudge that looked exactly like a promise made 50 years ago in the rain. What happens when the person you treat like trash holds the key to your past? And what happens when a billionaire architect realizes that the greatest design of his life was actually drawn by the janitor he ignored for months? This is a story about arrogance, regret, and the unbreakable bond of a childhood promise. It is a reminder that you should never judge someone by the clothes they wear, because you never know who they truly are. If you believe that kindness is more valuable than money and that arrogance deserves to be punished, please hit that subscribe button right now. Join our community at Prime Stories. We share tales that feed the soul. Now let's find out why William Thorne froze when he saw that blueprint. William Thorne was a man who lived in the sky. His office was on the 80th floor of the Thorne Spire, a building of steel and glass that pierced the clouds above Chicago. At 65 years old, William was considered a genius. He had reshaped the skylines of New York, London, and Tokyo. Critics called his work cold perfection. His buildings were flawless, efficient, and utterly devoid of warmth. Much like the man himself, William had no wife, he had no children. He had a driver who didn't speak, a housekeeper who came when he was at work, and a calendar filled with meetings he dreaded. He had built an empire of isolation. Tonight, he sat at his massive mahogany desk staring at a blank sheet of drafting paper. The rain lashed against the floor-to-ceiling windows, a rhythmic drumming that usually helped him think. But tonight, it only irritated him. He was trying to design his final project, the St. Jude's Community Center. It was a pro bono project, a shelter and school for orphans. It was supposed to be his legacy, his way of giving back. But every time he put his pen to paper, the lines came out sharp, aggressive, and industrial. He kept drawing prisons instead of homes. He rubbed his temples, the migraine setting in. "Mr. Thorne." The voice was soft, barely a whisper. William didn't look up. He knew who it was by the squeak of the rubber wheels on the linoleum. "What is it, Maggie?" he grunted. "I'm sorry to disturb you, sir," Maggie said. She stood in the doorway, clutching a feathered duster like a shield. I noticed you haven't eaten the sandwich I brought you 3 hours ago. Should I take it away?" William glanced at the untouched plate on the corner of his desk. "I'm not hungry, just empty the trash and go." "Yes, sir." He listened to the sound of her moving through the room. She was efficient, invisible. He had hired the cleaning service 5 years ago and he barely knew her face. To him, she was just a gray uniform and a pair of tired hands. He didn't know that she walked 3 miles to work every day because she couldn't afford the bus. He didn't know that she ate her lunch in the supply closet because the other staff made fun of her homemade soup. He didn't know that she stopped cleaning every night for exactly 10 seconds to look at the photo on his desk. A photo of him receiving an award with a look of heartbreaking pride. "Sir," Maggie spoke again, her voice trembling slightly. William slammed his pen down. "What is it now, Maggie?" "That design for the orphanage," she said, nodding toward the blank paper. "The roof, if you make it flat, the snow will pile up. It'll get cold in the winter. Maybe a pitched roof like a cabin." William finally turned his chair to look at her. His eyes were cold steel. "Maggie, what are your qualifications?" She blinked, confused. "Sir." Do you have a degree in structural engineering? Have you studied load-bearing dynamics? Do you know the tension strength of reinforced concrete? Maggie looked down at her shoes. No, sir, I just thought. Exactly, you just thought. I pay you to clean the floors, Maggie, not to design the ceiling. Please stick to what you know. Maggie shrank back as if he had slapped her. I'm sorry, Mr. Thorne, it won't happen again. She hurried out of the room, the wheels of her cart squeaking loudly in the silence. William sighed and turned back to his drawing. He felt a twinge of guilt, a small pinch in his chest, but he pushed it away. He was a busy man. He didn't have time for advice from the cleaning lady. He didn't notice that she had left something behind. On the floor near the wastebasket lay a small red carpenter's pencil, flat, wide, and chewed on the end. If William was the cold heart of the company, Brad was its poisonous tongue. Brad was the VP of design hired specifically to modernize the firm. He was obsessed with minimalism, white surfaces, and cutting costs. He viewed the older employees as dinosaurs and the support staff as invisible machinery. The next evening, the office was mostly empty. The sun had set, leaving the office bathed in the blue glow of computer monitors. Brad was packing the boardroom, talking loudly on his headset. I don't care about the community garden, Dave. Concrete is cheaper, just pave it over. These are orphans, they don't need a rose garden, they don't need a roof. Cut the budget by 15% and get me the new specs. He hung up and threw his phone onto the conference table. He was stressed. The board was demanding the final designs for the St. Jude's project by Friday, and William was stalling. Brad saw this as his chance. If he could present a cheaper, faster design, the board might finally push William into retirement and give Brad the CEO chair. He walked over to the main display table where the large-scale blueprints were laid out. And there she was. Maggie was leaning over the table. She wasn't cleaning. She had a piece of charcoal in her hand, a piece of burnt artist's charcoal she must have brought from home. She was drawing directly onto the expensive vellum paper of the master blueprint. Brad didn't just get angry, he exploded. Hey! Maggie jumped, dropping the charcoal. It shattered on the floor. Brad stormed across the room, his face purple with rage. Are you insane? Are you actually insane? Do you have any idea how much that paper costs? I wasn't, Maggie stammered, her hands shaking. I was just fixing the entryway. It looked too hard to open for small children. Brad grabbed her arm, pulling her away from the table. You were vandalizing company property. Who do you think you are? You're a janitor, a nobody. You clean up other people's filth. He shoved her backward. Maggie stumbled and hit her cleaning cart. The bucket tipped. Gray, soapy water splashed across the pristine marble floor and soaked into the expensive rug. Look at you, Brad sneered. Clumsy, stupid, useless. Maggie's eyes filled with tears. She didn't fight back. She had learned a long time ago that fighting back only made things worse. She fell to her knees and began trying to soak up the water with her sponge. I'll clean it up, sir, I promise. I'll make it like new. You won't be cleaning anything, Brad spat. You're fired. Get your things. If I see you in this building in 10 minutes, I'm calling the police for trespassing. Maggie stopped scrubbing. She looked up at him, a single tear tracking through the wrinkles on her cheek. Please, sir, I need this job. My rent is due. I have nowhere else to go. Not my problem, Brad said, turning his back on her. You should have thought of that before you decided to play architect. Maggie slowly stood up. She didn't look at the blueprint she had modified. She just wiped her hands on her apron, took a deep breath, and turned to leave. She left the bucket. She left the mop. She walked toward the elevator with the heavy, shuffling step of a woman whose spirit had finally been broken. But as the elevator doors closed, she didn't see the shadow standing in the hallway. William had been watching. William waited until the elevator hummed its way down to the lobby. Then, he walked into the boardroom. Brad spun around, startled. William, I didn't know you were still here. Did you see that? The cleaning lady went crazy, started drawing all over the master plans. I handled it though, she's gone. William didn't answer. He walked past Brad, his shoes crunching slightly on the charcoal shards scattered on the floor. He ignored the spilled water. He walked straight to the table. He looked down at the blueprint. It was the design for the main entrance of the orphanage. William had drawn a grand, imposing set of double glass doors. They were impressive, modern, and intimidating. But over his heavy ink lines there were soft charcoal sketches. Maggie had drawn over his doors. She had lowered the handles. She had added a small wooden porch with a bench, and off to the side in the garden section she had sketched something that made William's heart stop beating for a full 5 seconds. She had drawn a gazebo. But not a normal gazebo, it was crooked. The roof slanted too much to the left. The supports were made of mismatched logs. It looked like a pile of junk to anyone else. But to William, it looked like 1974. William was 10 years old. His name wasn't William Thorne back then, it was Billy, just Billy. He was skinny, terrified, and covered in bruises from the older boys at the foster home. He was hiding in the woods behind the group home, trying to stay dry under a piece of cardboard. "Move over, you're letting the rain in." It was a girl, Mags. She was 12, fierce, with hair that looked like a bird's nest and eyes that saw everything. She didn't have parents either. "It's too small," Billy cried, shivering. "We don't have a house." "Then we build one," Mags said. She pulled a red, flat carpenter's pencil out of her pocket. She had stolen it from a construction site. "I'll draw it, you build it." For 3 weeks they worked. They dragged fallen branches, stolen plywood, and rusted sheets of metal into the deep woods. Mags drew the plans on pizza boxes. She showed Billy how to wedge the logs so they wouldn't fall. When they finished, it was a crooked, ugly, dangerous shack. But when they sat inside, listening to the rain hit the tin roof, it felt like a castle. "One day," Mags said, sketching on the wall of their fort, "I'm going to live in a house with big windows, and I'm going to draw pictures all day." "And I'm going to build it for you," Billy promised. He held her hand. Her fingers were rough even then. "I promise, Mags, when we grow up I won't let anyone hurt us. I'll build a skyscraper and you can live at the top." 2 days later, the social workers came. They separated the boys and the girls. Billy was dragged into a blue sedan, screaming for Mags. She ran after the car, throwing rocks, screaming his name. That was the last time he saw her. He was adopted by the Thornes. They were wealthy. They changed his name. They told him to forget his trashy past, and he did. He buried Billy deep inside and he became William Thorne. He forgot the woods. He forgot the fort. But seeing that charcoal sketch of the crooked gazebo, the memory hit him like a physical blow. William touched the charcoal sketch on the paper. His finger came away black. "She drew the fort," he whispered. "What?" Brad asked, stepping closer. "It's just scribbles, William. Look, she ruined the entrance. I'll have the interns print a fresh copy in the morning, and don't worry, I told security to ban her from the building." William turned slowly. His face was pale, his eyes burning with a strange intensity. "You fired her." "Of course I fired her," Brad laughed nervously. "She's a liability, she's dirty, she's uneducated, and she thinks she can draw. It's pathetic, really." William looked at Brad. He saw himself 30 years ago, the arrogance, the cruelty disguised as business. "Brad," William said, his voice terrifyingly calm, "do you know why this company is successful?" "Because of your vision, sir." "No, it's successful because I know how things stand up. I know that if the foundation is weak, the tower falls. And tonight, I realized my foundation has been rotting for years." "I don't follow," Brad said, checking his watch. "Get her back." "Who?" "Maggie the janitor. Get her back here now." "William, she's gone. She's probably halfway to the bus stop. And frankly, it's late. We have the board meeting in the morning." William slammed his hand on the table, cracking the glass of a water pitcher. "I don't care if you have to run down the street in the rain, Brad. If she is not in this boardroom in 20 minutes, you are fired. Do you understand me?" Brad paled. He had never seen the old man like this. Okay, I'm going." Brad found Maggie sitting on a bench at the bus stop, shivering in the rain. She was hugging her plastic bag of belongings. When Brad pulled up in his sports car and told her to get in, she thought she was in trouble. She thought she was being arrested. She sat in the back seat, silent, dripping water onto the leather seats. When they entered the boardroom, Maggie kept her head down. She couldn't bear to look at Mr. Thorne. She was ashamed. "Here she is," Brad said, straightening his tie. "Now can we please get back to work?" William was standing by the window looking out at the city lights. He He turned around. He looked older, tired, but softer. "Maggie," he said gently, "come here, please." Maggie shuffled forward. "Mr. Thorne, I'm so sorry about the drawing. I didn't mean to ruin it. I'll pay for the paper out of my last check." "Look at the drawing, Maggie," William said. She looked up, confused. She stepped closer to the table. "Why did you draw this?" William asked, pointing to the crooked gazebo. "That structure, it's not structurally sound. It would collapse in a strong wind." Maggie smiled a sad, nostalgic smile. "I know, sir, but it was the only home I ever really loved. Me and a boy built it. A long time ago, he was scared of the thunder, so I built the roof thick so he couldn't hear it." William's eyes filled with tears. His hands trembled as he reached into his pocket. He pulled out an old, worn object he had kept in his desk drawer for 50 years, though he had told himself it was just a keepsake. It was a piece of blue glass, a shard from a broken bottle they had used as a window in that fort. He placed it on the blueprint, right in the center of the gazebo she had drawn. Maggie gasped. Her hands flew to her mouth. She looked from the glass to William. She looked past the expensive suit, the gray hair, the stern face. She looked into his eyes. "Billy," she whispered. Brad laughed. "Billy, his name is William Thorne. What is wrong with you?" "Shut up, Brad," William said, his voice cracking. William walked around the table. He didn't care about the muddy water dripping from Maggie's coat. He didn't care about the charcoal on her hands. He opened his arms and hugged the cleaning lady. He hugged her like a drowning man clutching a life raft. "I'm sorry, Mags," he wept into her shoulder. "I'm so sorry. I promised I'd come back." Maggie stood stiffly for a moment, shocked. Then she dropped her bag. She wrapped her tired arms around him and patted his back, just like she used to do when he was 10. "You're okay, Billy," she whispered. "You're okay. I knew you'd build the towers. I knew it." Brad stood there, his mouth open. I don't understand. She's the janitor." William pulled away from Maggie, keeping one arm around her shoulders. He turned to Brad. The warmth was gone from his face instantly. "She is not the janitor," William said. "She is the architect of my life. Without her, I wouldn't have survived the winter of 1974. Without her, there is no William Thorne." He pointed to the door. "Brad, leave your badge on the table. Get out." "You can't be serious," Brad sputtered. "You're firing me for her. I'm the future of this company." "You have no heart, Brad," William said. "And architecture without heart is just a cage. You're fired. Get out." Brad looked at William, then at Maggie. He scoffed, threw his badge on the mahogany table, and stormed out. The St. Jude's Community Center was finished 2 years later. It didn't look like a prison. It didn't look cold. It had a pitched roof, warm wooden beams, and a large front porch with benches. At the grand opening, the press was confused. William Thorne, the man of steel and glass, had built something cozy. During the ribbon-cutting ceremony, William stood at the microphone. He looked out at the crowd. In the front row, wearing a beautiful blue dress and holding a sketchbook, sat Maggie. She wasn't the janitor anymore. She was the lead consultant for the project. "I spent 50 years building towers to touch the sky," William told the crowd. "I wanted to be above everyone else. I wanted to be untouchable." He looked down at Maggie and smiled. "But it took a friend with a piece of charcoal to teach me that the most important buildings aren't the ones that scrape the clouds. They are the ones that keep out the rain. They are the ones that feel like home." He gestured for Maggie to join him on stage. She walked up the stairs, beaming. "This building," William said, "is dedicated to Mags, the girl who protected me when I had nothing, and the woman who forgave me when I had everything." William kept his promise. He built her a house, a real one with big windows where she could draw all day, but more importantly, he rebuilt their friendship. Life is full of people who will judge you by your title, your bank account, or your clothes. Like Brad, they will see only what is on the surface, but true worth is found in the heart. Never look down on the people who do the jobs you think are beneath you. The hands that clean the floors might be the same hands that once held the world together for someone else. If this story touched your heart, please share it with someone you love. And don't forget to subscribe to Prime Stories for more tales about love, justice, and the human spirit. Until next time, remember, the tallest towers are built on the deepest foundations.